Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups. And my special guest today is Eleanor Haglund. Eleanor, thank you for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. And so you and I are at a networking event. How would you introduce yourself to me?
I would say I'm probably a multi-time founder who's trying to help other founders go through, have kind of an easier time of the process of building startups.
So, but educationally, a little background. I mean,
Sure.
How did you kind of arrive at this multi-time founder?
Yeah. So originally from New Jersey, went to school at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh for my undergrad, and then did my graduate work, got my MBA at Columbia Business School, just recently graduated. And as I was going into my business school experience, my current co-founder and I decided to build this company, Aspire360.
So I'm going to cheat because I told you off camera, I was listening to another episode. Did you mention on that recording that like your first business, you started at a pretty young age?
Yeah, well, I started my first startup when I was, I think, a junior or senior in college.
Okay. And what was that?
So that was an enhanced ebook startup. We were looking to create a tool that would help authors put media into their ebooks.
Like video content,
interactive, sound,
yeah, great.
animation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's amazing. I mean, we've had books around for what, a millennium. I mean, it's since the printing press. So
Yeah.
the idea of kind of what's book 2.0, and is that kind of what you had in mind? You said, we've got to change this, a little more interactive experience, a little more, add some life to these pages.
Yeah, well, so I grew up, I was a huge reader. You could not get me away from the books that I was reading. If I did something wrong, my mom would actually she'd pull the books away and be like, you can't read anymore. Right. So that's how much I loved them. And so when I got to college, I kind of slowed down on my reading. There was a lot of other things to do and a lot of schoolwork to finish as well. And so I slowed down on it. And I also noticed that my peers were not reading very much at all. And I wanted to kind of bring that love that I had for books to other folks. And I noticed that there was a lot of like rich media. Carnegie Mellon had a huge entertainment technology center that was doing really, really cool things with the future of media.
Right.
And so I thought, why not combine these two and try and make something new and exciting for people to get excited about stories?
So I don't know what the statistics are, but I mean, so many great founders are just avid readers. They read a lot. They read a lot of different things, not just business books, but I mean, just a wide variety of different genres. So what was, can you like attribute, your love, or I guess the great foundation you have, to the fact that you read so much?
I think that you never know, right? It's the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
But I think that my love of reading and my love of stories has kind of contributed throughout my life to all the things that I've done. Kind of when you're building a company, part of building a company is being able to communicate that story and why you're doing it and why people should care. And so all of this kind of comes together. But I also think that there's a certain degree of like a love of learning when you're reading, you're seeing new worlds, or you're learning about an experience that you yourself never got the chance to experience. And so I think that there's two pieces there, that love of learning and that joy of telling stories.
I think it's funny you mentioned the storytelling aspect of kind of building a business, but I think it's actually externally and internally. I mean, it's not just telling your message to potential clients or telling the story to clients to kind of paint that vision. It's also painting culture. It's also creating culture within the business itself as you're kind of growing it. And, the best leaders are those that cast vision. They're not managers, they're leaders. And that's one of the key differentiators between, those two things. But talk a little bit about the company. Let's start with that one that you did in college. What was kind of its its growth pattern or its life cycle or whatever. Talk about that, and then we'll talk about what you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so my first company was definitely a learning opportunity, and not
They
the
always are.
unicorn success that we all look for in kind of the first time we try things. So I built a product, created a team, brought it to market, worked with a couple of New York Times bestselling authors, had a really fun time with it, but ultimately realized that there was not a huge market for novelists looking to put technology products into their writing. And so didn't really want to pivot into more of the professional writing area where you can kind of create, what is it called? When you have a book that teaches you how to use a manual. There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't want to pivot into kind of manual creation and trying to make that more interactive. And so I ultimately decided to close down the business and move on to learning more about the startup space and building that way.
Was this like grown out of a class project, or was this something you just kind of did it on your own?
So I wouldn't say I did it on my own, but it wasn't also a class project. So there was a program at Carnegie Mellon. It was the Innovation Scholars Program, and it was designed to do like a little mini MBA for undergraduate students and teach you all about entrepreneurship and how to build a business, how to talk to customers, all this stuff. And through that, a lot of us become quite inspired and decide to try and test ourselves against the world. And that was when I decided to build this.
And there were other students that had different ideas, kind of like a university incubator kind of project.
Yeah, so the incubator portion of the university was called Project Olympus, and is now part of the Schwartz Center. But there were a ton of people building things, and that was part of what was so inspiring. I think a lot of people go to co-working spaces, they want to be around the innovation, the excitement, and part of being in that incubator, being among those people, was just seeing what people were building. People were building robots beside you. It was just really fun.
So anybody that's listening to this right now, I want you to pause the podcast. I want you to flip over to YouTube, and I want you to rewind about a minute. I want you to see how her face lights up when she starts talking about this. It's like, it's like she had a religious experience right here in the middle of the podcast. But I mean, you talk about, coming to life. I mean, your eyes just lit up when you were talking about, that particular thing. I mean, that's what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would not trade that experience in my life for anything. It was an inspiration. It gave me the foundation to build startups past when I graduated, and kind of weather all the storms. So
I've interviewed hundreds of people on this podcast, and we do a kind of a startup founder like virtually every week. And I've talked to people from 25 different countries, and we've done this for the last 3 years or so. And it's interesting. There are almost two types of founders. There are two types of like entrepreneur like subsets. One is, I just like to create stuff. I don't like to run it. I like to create it. I'm the early stage. Once it gets up and running, I'd like to step out and try something new, and then let the implementer, kind of take over. Others are like, I really want to see this through to the full product cycle and through full business cycle or whatever. Which one of those camps would you fall in? I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious what you would say.
I'm not sure. I mean, it depends on where you see like the life cycle of the company. I think I would probably put myself more towards, I love the like getting things up and running, creating new things, and then kind of making sure that they have enough resources to kind of make it, and then letting someone kind of scale it from, I don't know, let's call it 100 million to a billion or whatever. But I see kind of the first like 5 or 6 years of the company as the most exciting. You're hitting those problems for the first time. Hopefully you're doing something that like people haven't done before. It's challenging, it's exciting. And so I think I would fall in the earlier part of the dichotomy, but it depends on how you see the life cycle of the company.
Actually, it's funny because I'm secret here. I would have guessed that was where you would tend to gravitate, but I would have said that cycle was a lot shorter. I would have said, hey, 24 months in, she is probably ready to do something else. 18 to 24 months, it's almost getting stale in her own mind. But I mean, it's funny when I talk to early stage founders, or the people that would fall in that camp, it's like their mind is this continuous conference room and every wall is a whiteboard.
Yeah.
And it's just the gears are always spinning. Even if they're working on a project, they're thinking about other things. They're thinking about other projects at the same time. So all these lessons that you're learning, nothing's wasted. Nothing's wasted in kind of the entrepreneurial economy. So, failures, successes, they all kind of come back to play. But so talk about what you're doing today.
Yeah. So the company is called Aspire360, and we're actually about to launch our beta of our product. And what we're doing is we're helping entrepreneurs get connected with investors. So when I was building my companies, I really wanted to have access to these folks who I knew were aligned with my vision, but I just couldn't quite get there. And it comes from being kind of maybe a first-time founder or an early stage founder. Once you've done it a couple of times, you do start to build your network. But I want everyone who has a problem that they're passionate about to be able to reach out to these resources and kind of get some of that traction, build some of that traction, and then also get access to capital. And we're doing that through this product.
So, I mean, there are so many questions just in that one statement that I'm thinking, what the model, I mean, what part of the model you would focus on? I mean, is it an incubator? Is it are you kind of business consulting? Are you just kind of brokering venture capital firms? I mean, where would you say your primary focus is?
Yeah, so I would say that our primary focus is in the connections between the two parties. So the product that we're releasing is a software tool that allows companies to assess themselves, really get a good understanding of their strengths, their weaknesses, where they can grow. And then use that information and our data on investor preferences, what they're really looking for, not what they tell you that they're looking for, and make those connections, double opt-in on both sides, and enable them to actually have that first conversation.
So are you looking to build like an inventory of companies that VCs could kind of almost, I hate to use the word shop, but, I guess, like vet or kind of do some due diligence through the tool? Or is it really just kind of like match.com for, entrepreneurs and investors?
Yeah. So we don't want it to be an inventory. So we're bringing folks in on both sides, both the startup side and the investor side, to be part of it's more of a marketplace.
Right.
I would say that your kind of match.com is fairly close to the heart. We want people who are good matches for each other to start having conversations. And ultimately, if it ends up with a marriage of two parties and capital is given and the entrepreneur is ready to go, then that's the ideal.
So is the business model, are you taking equity? Are you saying, we get 1% of the deal? What's kind of the model? Because I could see, the entrepreneur and the VC getting together. Great. Oh, you want a piece of this too. That's right. All you did, you just connected us. Yeah, that type of thing. I know it's much more than that, but what's the model?
Yeah, so it's a SaaS model. So we're kind of staying out of the equity piece right now, and just providing a tool that allows the interaction, and letting them kind of take care of the messy nitty-gritty of the equity later and by themselves.
Now, is this like a monthly subscription? Now, are they paying it from both sides, or is it almost like real estate, like it's the seller pays all the fees or the buyer pays all the fees?
Yeah, so it's a freemium model. So entrepreneurs can get access to the assessments completely for free, and the investors can also get access to the assessments for their own for themselves for free. And then the connection portion is that paid model, and it is on both sides.
And is it like driven by the app itself, or you actually have people that are out there kind of beating the bushes that are making these connections? Like you're reviewing entrepreneurs that are coming in and you're reviewing VCs that are coming in, you're thinking, hey, we got to get these two together? Or is the software kind of does that on its own?
Yeah, well, so we're using machine learning to make good matches between the two. So the data that's provided on both sides is actually what helps make those matches so great.
So I can understand, and I, forgive me, I am certainly a layman, so forgive me these questions. You're going to go, that's a dumb question.
No.
I understand the kind of the entrepreneur assessing kind of their business side of things. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I understand the assessment from the angel or the VC side.
Yeah, that's really to get down to what the investor is looking for, what the investor is looking for at the time, because that does tend to change.
Sure.
And then the types of founders that they're most excited to work with. Some investors are really looking for that aggressive, like takes no prisoners type of entrepreneur, and others are looking for more of that like collaborative, creates a good culture type of entrepreneur. And so we're looking to kind of match those types of visions as well as the types of companies specifically within industries.
So once again, you've kind of painted a dichotomy here, and I have to decide which one you are. Are you the take no prisoner, or are you the collaborative type?
I think that I am somewhere in the
The
middle,
silent
everything's a
assassin.
spectrum. But probably one of those driven, but very, very focused on making sure that culture and people come together.
So you and I are hopping on an elevator, and we're going to go up 10 floors. We're going to your next 45 seconds. So give me your best Aspire360.io pitch.
All right. So Aspire360 is a machine learning platform that connects entrepreneurs with investors, drastically reducing the amount of time that it takes to find capital or great investments. Yeah, I think that's it.
No, I absolutely. So if my next question would be, so are there some examples where this has already happened kind of within the platform?
Yeah, so we actually launched a V1, just like a really early manual version of our product at the beginning of the year. We wanted to see whether or not it was something that entrepreneurs were looking for, whether it was something investors were looking for. And so we thought before we build anything, might as well try and do this on our own. We did that. We had basically coaches kind of both guiding folks through the fundraising process and then also making relevant connections. And it worked really well. The entrepreneurs were really happy. A lot of them were getting funded. And so we decided this coaching model where you have a person in the middle is too it's too hands-on to be able to provide
It's hard
the
to
help.
scale.
Yeah, it's hard to
Yeah,
scale.
impossible
And
to scale. Yeah.
it's hard to get the entrepreneurs enough money that they can kind of pay for the really quality coaches. Like the
Right.
people who have the best connections are expensive.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make it more accessible to the earlier folks. And so that's why we decided to build a product.
So like a friend of mine is, I mean, his entire service is built around just finding companies for venture capital firms to invest in.
Yeah.
He just bringing them deals all the time.
Yeah.
So what would this app provide that those types of services don't? Is there a financial incentive? Is this a lot more financially, I don't want to use the word less expensive, but is it more financially lucrative for a venture capitalist to go through this service than it is these other kind of brokerage houses? Or what's kind of the advantages and disadvantages of both?
Sure. Well, so a brokerage, you're definitely going to get a very, very like personalized, intensive kind of experience. You can't always ensure kind of the quality of everyone who is brokering those deals. So that's just
or
one.
If they have a vested interest.
Exactly. Yeah. It's you never know. So it's potential to kind of spend a lot of money and maybe you will get some good results and maybe you won't. And so you do have to kind of look out for that. We see ourselves as much more of an unbiased kind of tool for the entrepreneurs and the investors to use. We don't call ourselves a broker and we don't promise that people will get investment.
Right.
But we're at a low enough price point that people actually, even if you don't get investment, you make some really good connections. And you might be able to kind of connect with them down the line during the next fundraising round because you've started building those relationships. So we see ourselves as kind of differentiating from those folks with a lot more data, some feedback in terms of kind of where you can improve, some support there, and then obviously a little bit more unbiased.
So is the communication between the two parties within the app itself, or is it that really just the connection point, and then they go on and do their thing outside the environment?
Yeah, so the conversation can continue within the platform. You can share information, you can share pitch decks, things like that. You can chat within the platform. if you need to take the conversation offline, we're kind of open to that. Our main focus right now is really kind of getting that
Just making the
first
connection.
conversation
Right.
started.
Right. So it's interesting, the idea that that you've come up with. And oftentimes, I mean, like I said, in the 3 years or so that I've actually talked to startup founders, so many times the product or the service that they've created was born out of a pain point that they experienced.
Of course.
Is that, I mean, would that be the case here? Did you experience the difficulty of fundraising and thought there's got to be a better way?
I definitely did. And then I felt like I took the next step. I realized that I had a limited network and that I would need to expand that in order to be successful with my startups. And then I did that. I made sure that I had one-on-one meetings with as many people that I really wanted to learn from, right? Like I started really putting a lot of effort into building my network. And I reaped the rewards of that. I have a wonderful network of people who are willing to support me, go out of their way to support the companies that I work with. But I realized, kind of looking back and looking at some of my peers, that not everyone has that, and not everyone has the time to invest in kind of building that for themselves. And so I wanted to kind of spread that and share some of that.
Where do you see the platform in, say, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah.
What's your entrepreneurial vision?
My entrepreneurial vision. Yeah. I mean, I would love for Aspire360 to be the go-to place for entrepreneurs in the early stages. So if they're kind of looking for capital, which always seems kind of to be the first thing on entrepreneurs' minds, I want them to think of Aspire360. But also if they're looking for kind of connections with other types of support, mentors, peer groups, masterminds, things like that, I want them to think of Aspire as that go-to place, that hub of entrepreneurship.
So is there in your mind, I mean, I want to ask this question, I could probably almost answer it before I ask it, but like, do you have like future iterations and think, okay, in 2.0 version or 3.0 version, we're going to have this, and we're going to add this service, we're going to add this community, this interactive, channel over here or whatever. And then we're going to become our own VC firm, and we're going to, do this, and we're going to have an incubator. And I mean, is it going to be an entire ecosystem, or are you going to really no, we're just going to stay in our lane and do our thing?
So we're going to stay in our lane and do our thing until we've kind of blown it out and done it the best that we can. I think that there are a lot of areas that we can grow in, a lot of potential for different tools and ways that we can support entrepreneurs. And there are kind of V2, V3 add-ons in terms of kind of what things that we can provide entrepreneurs in that way.
So 12 to 18 months, I'm going to have her back on and ask her what's version 3.0 look like. So
I will work hard so I have that V2 and V3 for you.
Exactly. So this is another, kind of a layman assumption here. So if it's wrong, if it's erroneous, please just, hey, throw the flag. It's 15-yard penalty. It's a personal foul. No question. But I hear so many times, VC firms talk about, we don't have problem attracting people. We get inundated with requests for funding. I mean, inundated. We get dozens a day, people wanting money. So what is what's the incentive for a venture capitalist or an angel investor to use the platform? I certainly can see the supply side of things. But what's the demand side? So what's the incentive for the VC side? I mean, or is it, hey, these are VCs just getting started, these are VCs that are not getting inundated? Who's populating that other side of the equation?
For sure. Yeah. And of course, for VCs that don't have enough deal flow, that this can be valuable. The way that we're valuable to most VCs or most investors is relevant deal flow. And so instead of getting just kind of a massive influx of people who want money, but maybe are just completely irrelevant. Like, you only invest in medical startups and they're doing like hardware for trucks, like just completely different. Like pure, like only the deal flow that is exactly relevant gets connected with the relevant investors. And then we also are hopefully adding some value in terms of the information that they are getting when they're having those initial meetings. So the entrepreneur obviously has full control over their data, always, but they're able to share really relevant information that is populated into the system in a really easy way.
Mhm.
And that helps the investor kind of jump in, and they don't have to ask all those questions.
Right.
They already
Yeah.
have that, and they can
Yeah.
start that process. It shortens it, and it helps them move faster. VCs these days, there are a lot of VCs, and they're all competing for a couple of deals.
Yep.
And so the ability to move quickly and nail down that deal is very important to them.
Kind of shorten that due diligence, process that they have to go through.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So, um, the thing I've heard so often is that people love to work with startups. They love to work with startup founders. But the thing they found, if they're providing that service, is that startup founders don't have any money.
Yeah.
They need the help, but they don't have any money. So
Yeah.
how have you gotten around that?
Yeah. So
It's only $1 a month. That's how we try.
yeah. I mean, I have been that startup founder. I have been the startup founder where people are like, we need you to pay. And I'm like, I
I'd
don't
love
have
to.
cash.
That's right.
And
Call
this
me in 2
cash,
years.
this small bundle of cash that I do have, I can't spend it on that.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
it has to be about acquiring customers. So I get it, and I've seen it. That's why we've built the model to be kind of amenable to startups. We've talked to hundreds of them, and our price points are extremely affordable for them. And so that is part of why we have created the business model in the way that we have.
So if you were going to define your avatar client, what would be the demographics of the ideal, Aspire360 startup founder?
Yeah. And this is constantly iterating, because there are so many different types of founders.
Mhm.
But I would say kind of an early founder, someone between kind of pre-seed and Series A,
Mhm.
either a first or second time founder. And currently we're focused on the continental US,
Right.
or not just continental. We're focused on the US,
Right.
and looking to kind of expand globally as we move forward.
So, but these are founders that they've done something. I mean, they're showing some growth. There's some revenue coming in. There's something to actually, judge by. It's not like I've got the next great idea, but we're kind of pre-revenue,
Yeah.
stage.
Well, anyone can join the platform. Once they take some of the assessments, they might understand kind of where they are in the life cycle.
Mhm.
And we have some resources that can help kind of ramp them up so that they can build their business to the point where they are really ready for investors and ready to kind of put their best foot forward. You only really get one shot at a first
Right.
impression.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so that's kind of what we would help the earliest folks kind of navigate. But yes, a lot of the folks that are ready can kind of just plug their info in and run with it.
So when did Aspire360 start? What was its birth date?
It's been about 2 years. So I think we started end of 2019.
And walk us through kind of the growth. I mean, just even numbers, like how many people are using the platform, maybe from both sides in that last, I guess, almost 2 years.
Yeah, well, so it took us about a year to kind of get our initial launch. We did a lot of customer discovery. We were trying to figure out what we wanted to build.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that first year, we launched V1. We built it up to about 30 or so folks in that very personalized kind of coaching model.
Right. Very much
And then
hands-on.
and then we're about to launch our V2 of the product. And so we have several hundred folks that will be participating in that. They'll be giving us a ton of feedback, and then we'll launch our official version, hopefully Q1 of next year.
So you're actually in kind of the beta phase. I mean, is it a closed group that you're working with right now, or is it just, people that are signing up? You're kind of, it's like you understand you're signing up almost to a beta version.
Yeah. So the folks that we've been signing up are, we initially kind of brought them in. We were like, are you excited about the product? And they were like, yes, like give us access immediately.
Yeah.
When is it going to be available? And so those are the kind of folks that we brought in. But we wanted to kind of give them the chance to experience the product and help us continue to improve it before we do our full public launch.
So I'm curious how you determined what the costing structure would look like. And does it have anything to do with size of company or size of ask? Or, I mean, if somebody's looking for $50,000 versus somebody's looking for 5 million, I mean, is it the same like barrier of entry into the platform, into the non-freemium model, I guess, or the cost model?
Yeah. So we didn't want to kind of say like, you're raising 5 million, and so like you should pay us more. We wanted it to just be a simple, straightforward model. Everyone can get access to it, and have it be really friendly and simple that way. So truly, if you are raising 5 million or if you are raising 50,000, you can kind of access the product at the same price point.
And I mean, obviously there's no guarantees, but I mean, is there, you really don't even have a track record yet about, like the percentage of, people that join have actually closed deals versus that type of thing? Or do you have any kind of numbers or metrics around that?
So we don't have metrics for the specific like software product, but we have seen a lot of success with our kind of personalized
concierge
model
service.
before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So we know that we can do it. And now we're kind of looking to scale it.
Now we're just going to scale. That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It is exciting to be on just kind of the cutting edge of this and the very early stage. And are there any other people out there that you have direct competitors?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of competitors. There are a couple of direct competitors, folks that are looking to use AI to kind of create portfolios of startups for investors to come into. There are a lot of indirect competitors, which to me says that there's kind of like a big untapped market.
Yeah.
I mean, accelerators, incubators. There's a lot of folks use PitchBook, Crunchbase, AngelList to kind of find their investors. But when you ask entrepreneurs and when you ask investors kind of where they're finding folks, they're looking at lists online, they're talking to their friends, or they're asking their connections. Yep. And so there's got to be a more efficient or better way to do that than just asking who you know.
Right.
If they have a friend of a friend who might have some money that they might be able to give you.
Exactly. Is it a misnomer to say that there's a lot of money available right now? There's a lot of money that they want to invest.
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of dry powder. Folks are looking to invest it for sure.
You mean CDs are not paying a good enough return?
Surprisingly.
Surprisingly, that's right. My 0.75% return on a CD, right? It just isn't quite doing it for me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, might want to look elsewhere on that one.
Might look for something else, some other alternative. So, well, as we wrap up today, is there anything that we haven't chatted about? You kind of want to wrap us up and just also just tell people where the best place to find you online.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So anyone can find us online at www.aspire360.io. And feel free to reach out. Our email is up there, but you can also find us on social media at Aspire360 CEOs.
And there, you said there are assessment tools on there, like if they're wanting just to kind of dip their toe in the water or whatever, and see, what is this about? And we're kind of thinking about raising money and just kind of, I'm assuming that it would also prepare the company even for, to put you in a better position to actually talk to VCs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our goal is for those meetings that are set up to be successful, right? When the entrepreneur is successful, we're successful. When the investor is successful, we're successful. So we want those parties to be excited about each other when they're having that conversation. So any way that we can help prepare the entrepreneurs, we do.
And financialmatch.com, and they live happily ever after as a married couple. It's right off into the sunset. Everybody's happy. So, Eleanor, it's been a great pleasure to chat with you today and just kind of hear your backstory and to hear the story of Aspire360. And it's going to be exciting to kind of watch your progress from afar and see how things are going to grow in this space. And we just want to thank you again for taking time on this Friday afternoon to just play your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Eleanor, have a great afternoon.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.